Hello, hello, this is Grunch, and I have a treat for everybody. We have a Gatecrash Draft. That's right. It's out on Magic Online. It's a pre-release draft. Swiss, because that's the only thing they let you draft for the pre-release. So we're going to do a Swiss pre-release Gatecrash Draft. It's kind of exciting. Here we go. Here we go. Alright. So, to start off with, I think the most powerful card in this pack is actually Dinrova Horror. I think it's pretty clearly better than any of the other cards. However, I think Dimir is the worst guild in the pack, in the set. So, I think the choice then comes down to Boros Charm, Spark Trooper, or possibly Knight of Obligation if you just think Orzhov is the nuts. But if you're at the point where you're drafting Knight of Obligation out of this pack, you're ahead of me in far as knowledge of the format. So then I think it becomes just Boros Charm versus Spark Trooper. I think it comes down to those two cards. And I think it's Boros Charm. It's a really flexible spell. Most of the time it's going to do as much damage as Spark Trooper. It's just a lot less situational, not as expensive. Yeah, I think it's just Boros Charm pretty clearly. I'm willing to entertain the idea for just a few more seconds that it should be Spark Trooper, but you have to really value that lifelink, so I just don't think Spark Trooper's getting there. Alright, here comes next pack. Alright, so we have 3 Dimir uncommons, which is kinda disappointing. Kinda unfortunate. There's also Drakewing Crossus, that's a pretty good one. Ivy Street Denizen, which I initially underestimated. Was not a big fan of that, didn't know that it was any creature, misread it. Riot Gear is also okay. Frilled Oculus is okay. The rest of the pack's kind of just dumpy. So here there isn't another good Boros card for us, so we have to kind of hedge in what direction we're going to go. And I think Undercity Informer is the pick just because it leaves you open to go Orzhov. You don't necessarily have to go straight into Dimir. You could argue that Mind Eye Drake leaves you open for Simic, but I don't think that Mind Eye Drake's as powerful as that or the Guild Mage. And again, just like I passed the Dinrova Horror because I didn't want to be Dimir, I'm going to pass the Duskmantle Guild Mage because I don't want to be Dimir. I'd much rather be Orzhov and an Undercity Informer, or even Dimir if we're forced into it, than drafting a early Dimir card. Alright. So this pack has a Mugging, a Scorchwalker, and an Ember Beast. Those are all pretty sweet. There's a Guild Gate, but I don't think at this point you drafted that high. There is also an Executioner Swing and a Vizkopa Confessor. So I think it comes down to one of the 3 red cards or one of the 2 Orzhov cards. And given the choice, I'd rather be either Gruul or Boros than Orzhov. It's possible that's wrong. It's very, very possible I get this pick wrong, but I'm going to end up taking the Mugging here. I think cheap removal is at a premium in this format. It seems like a pretty aggressive format, and I think Mugging is exactly kind of where you want to be in an aggressive format. Again, it's possible that a few weeks from now we'll just be like, gosh, you're so dumb, Grunch, you should pick Vizkopa Confessor here. But for now, taking the Mugging, and I'm perfectly happy with Mugging. Alright, next pack. Another Mugging. Sweet! So the cards to consider here, this pack actually has quite a bit of removal. It's got Mugging, Angelic Edict, Devour Flesh, Arrows of Justice. I suppose there's an outside argument for Scorchwalker. At this point, again, we kind of have to make this call. Are we drafting an Orzhov deck, or are we drafting, I think, what looks like a start of a Boros deck here? And I think, just because of the mana cost difference between Mugging and Angelic Edict, those being the 2 most powerful removal spells in the pack, that it's going to end up being Mugging. Even though Angelic Edict is the more powerful card overall, it's just so much more expensive. It's possible, once again, that I'm wrong, and this should just be like, duh, you picked Devour Flesh here, and then... But, again, we're going to take the Mugging. I'm more sure of what that card does and how to draft those guilds at this point, so we're going to start there. Alrighty. Next pack has some stuff. Some green cards. There's cards I would consider here. There's a Key Rune, the Rust Scarab, Purge the Profane if we were trying to draft Orzhov, Greenside Watcher, which might actually be a pretty good card, and Foundry Street Denizen for your Boros deck. So I'm gonna end up picking the Greenside Watcher here, I think. But this might actually be a misdraft because I kind of underrated Foundry Street Denizen initially. I think that card's actually a lot better than I gave it credit for being. So I think I'm going to pick this Greenside Watcher here, but I think in retrospect that's actually wrong. I think actually Foundry Street Denizen is probably better than Greenside Watcher if you're going to end up in Boros. Although this pack looked like it could have been Gruul deck. So here we have Holy Mantle, another Vizkopa Confessor, Kingpin's Pet. So there's definitely an Orzhov deck to be drafted in the seat we're in, but there's also an Act of Treason and a Scab Clan Charger. So it looks like Boros, Orzhov, and Gruul are all sort of like available to be picked, but the most powerful card here I'm pretty sure is Holy Mantle. Like, protection from creatures and +2/+2 is just monstrous. Like, it's, I don't want to say bomb just because it's an aura and there's all these risks that come involved with an auras, but it's going to push damage through. It's going to give you an unbeatable blocker. It's a really powerful card. So I'm picking the Holy Mantle here, which kind of pushes us more towards Boros now that we've gone, Boros Charm, Double Mugging, and then Holy Mantle. Alright, so this pack, there's another Undercity Informer and a Death's Approach, which makes me suspect there's a Dimir Guild deck to be drafted here. But Daring Skyjack, I think, is the card that we want. It looks pretty solidly like we might be going Boros here. Again, there's an outside chance I should be drafting Executioner Swing and drafting Orzhov, but I think Daring Skyjack's about as good as Executioner Swing, maybe even slightly better, if you get the right kind of battalion deck for it. So we're gonna take the Daring Skyjack, and I think we're starting down the Boros line pretty heavily here. Alright. So here we have another Kingpin's Pet and a Balustrade Spy, Act of Treason, and Riot Gear. The fact that there's a Kingpin's Pet still in this pack, at this point I was really concerned that I should have just been drafting Orzhov all along. But Act of Treason is pretty good. And so, given that I have 2 muggings, I'm going to stick with my Boros deck right now. Although Kingpin's Pet, I haven't had a chance to really play with it much, but it's pretty strong. I'm not actually sure which of these is better. But we're going to stay on target here, I guess. So now we've got the Knight of Obligation came back around, which it's not a bad card in Boros. Don't get me wrong. Extort drains their life. It's totally fine in Boros, but it's just a little bit on the slow side, but it's still perfectly playable. It's possible I should be taking Foundry Street Denizen here, since I am a Boros deck, and it's not that difficult to make Foundry Street Denizen actually just be a Savannah Alliance. But I think Knight of Obligation is just so much more powerful. I'm going to take that. Alright. Next up. So this pack's kind of empty. Riot Gear and Gutter Skulk are the only sort of main deck worthy cards here, which obviously puts us taking the Riot Gear just because we're not going to pick or play Gutter Skulk. We're not anywhere near that desperate. It's kind of funny to me that the 3 unplayable cards in the pack are all red and white, but what are you going to do? Not sure how good Riot Gear is at this point, but it looks like it would be pretty good in a Boros deck. Alright, so this pack has nothing but a Vizkopa Confessor, which is just... It was really unfortunate, and I was... as I was drafting this time, I thought to myself, have I just misdrafted? Have I just thrown away a really good Orzhov deck this draft? Because, is Vizkopa Confessor terrible? Does everybody else know something I don't? I don't know. Alright, then the next pack has just a Corpse Blockade, at which point I'm thinking to myself, if all my late playables were going to be in Orzhov, maybe I need to more heavily consider that, but I mean, I'll take it here, but it's kind of unfortunate to give up 2 muggings, a Boros Charm, and an Act of Treason if that's what has to happen, you know? But then there's a Foundry Street Denizen, second to last, which I think this card's actually quite a bit better than I initially estimated it to be. I'm not saying it's an early pick, but it's the kind of card you would like to be getting at this point in the pack. And then we get a Nav Squad Commandos, which is very marginal. Probably better in Orzhov than it is in Boros, but don't want to have to play it regardless. And then somehow somebody picked a basic land over another Nav Squad Commandos. So I guess somebody was like, you know what, if you really want your Siege Mastodons, you got it. You got it, buddy. Alright, so here we go into pack 2, and I'm trying to decide between Boros or Orzhov. And obviously we open Simic Manipulator, which is a sweet card for either Dimir or Simic, but not for us. Not a sweet card for us. So now I'm debating between the Wojak Halberdiers or the Devour Flesh. Those are really the 2 most powerful cards, and it basically comes down to which of the 2 guilds that I think I could be drafting do I want to be drafting. And I decide I want the Wojak Halberdiers. I think Boros Charm is sweet. I already have 2 muggings, which is really good. And you know, I didn't pass barely any Boros playables, so I suspect this second pack I should get quite a bit of a hookup on the Boros. But I did pass a decent amount of Orzhov, so I suspect that, like, this direction the Boros will be flowing very freely, but the Orzhov should be more taken up, if that makes sense. It's possible that this is wrong. Again, I've been this whole draft worried that, you know, I should have been on Orzhov the entire time. But, yeah, Wojak Halberdiers is still a pretty solid card. So, take that. And then, so here we get our choice between Sky Knight Legionnaire, Pit Fight, Scorchwalker, Syndic of Tithes, and if we were Orzhov, we could pick Cartel Aristocrat, which is much weaker than, I think, any of the other cards I mentioned. I guess there's White of Precinct 6, but you'd have to be the blue-black mill deck to want that. I think it's Sky Knight Legionnaire here. I think he's one of the premier Boros commons. Setting up Battalion earlier, haste and evasion. I think he's just excellent, does everything Boros wants to be doing. Just one of the marquee cards for that guild. So I'm going to take it. And at this point, I would argue this is the pick where the draft sort of really cements, and I'm pretty obviously the Boros player on this side of the table. Despite all my wavering and uncertainty of pack 1 with all those awesome Orzhov cards, if I can get Sky Knight Legionnaires, I'll be completely happy drafting the Boros deck in this seat. So it's possible Pit Fight. I'm underestimating, but I still just think Legionnaire's better. And then this pack, I was just blown away by the fact that there's just nothing here. I mean, there's just, for Boros, there's a Tin Street Market, or I suppose a Dutiful Thrall, if you want to do that. But for Orzhov, there's an Orzhov Key Rune, and I suspect Orzhov Key Rune is probably the second best of all the Key Runes in this set for the guilds that want it. Like, the Gruul Key Rune, I think, fits a little bit better into what the Gruul want to do. But after that, I'm pretty sure the Orzhov Key Rune fits the Orzhov deck the best. So this is actually one of those packs where, despite the fact that I decided I was Boros at this point, I still hedged. I think Tin Street Market is very, very marginal. I would not want to main deck it under basically any circumstances. And I only would really want to sideboard it against an extremely removal-heavy deck. So I draft the Orzhov Key Rune just a last hedge in case something horrible goes wrong in the next couple packs, but still not happy about it. So then here we get a real choice. I could draft the Skinbrand Goblin, I could draft Assault Griffin, I could draft Boros Key Rune. If we were Orzhov, I think the pick could actually potentially be Smite. But since I'm Boros, comes down to one of the 3 more aggressive cards, and I think Skinbrand Goblin is actually the pick. The Boros Key Rune isn't bad, but I don't think the Boros want to be tapping out on turn 3 for something that isn't immediately a creature. An Assault Griffin is fine, but again, at 4 mana, I don't think it's better than the Skinbrand Goblin, so I'm going to take the Skin Brand Goblin. I think his Blood Rush effect is awesome with all the double strike you can get in Boros. There's some first strike too. I think of all the guilds, the one that wants a Goblin Piker the most is definitely the Boros deck. You need to set up battalions, you need a critical mass of creatures, especially cheap creatures, so we're taking him. Alright, so next we have the only really Boros card in this pack is a Bomber Core, which is unfortunate because looking at the pack, there's a Zamek Guildmage, which is fantastic for the Simic, and there's a couple of Dimir cards. There's a Last Thoughts, a Mortis Strider, a Way of the Thief, and a Midnight Recovery. There's also a Greenside Watcher, so like and an Adaptive Snapjaw. So like the Simic deck and the Gruul deck might get something out of this, and whoever's drafting Dimir just has their choice of any of the cards in the pack. Like this pick actually kind of convinces me that whoever's drafting Dimir should be able to get whatever they want after the black removal is taken. Like whatever other Dimir cards are in the pack, if you have to fight for those with other people, you're probably in the wrong seat for Dimir. But anyway, I'll take a Bomber Core. It's perfectly fine. It's not exciting, but it's a playable. And then we come to a pack where I have a choice. I have Skinbrand Goblin or Hellraiser Goblin. Of note, the pack also contains Whispering Madness, Drakewing Crossus, Last Thoughts, and Paranoid Illusions. So again, 3 Cypher spells, so nobody wants the Cypher spells apparently. And I think Drakewing Crossus is actually kind of an early pick for Simic. I don't know why it's... I guess there's no Simic player 2 seats to my left. I'm going to pick Hellraiser Goblin here. I'm not actually sure if it's better than Skinbrand Goblin, although once I post the video for the matches that I played with this deck, it becomes apparent that Hellraiser Goblin is actually just the nut. It's actually just far, far better than I thought it was. At the time, I was really uncertain about this pick, but after having gotten to play with both cards, it's definitely Hellraiser Goblin. Alright, so this next pack, I get to pick up the Skinbrand Goblin that I didn't just pick. Woohoo! There's also a Slaughterhorn, a Rust Scarab, a Miming Slime, Last Thoughts, and a Gruul Guildgate. So, I guess this pack just kind of opened heavy on the Gruul side of things, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of funny to me that Slaughterhorn is going this late, because I would think if there was a Gruul player within, say, 2 to 3 seats of me to the left, he probably should have taken Slaughterhorn. Like, obviously I don't know what else was in the pack, and maybe he picked, like, a pit fight or some busted uncommon, but I think Slaughterhorn's actually a really, really strong Grail card. So, I'm surprised to see it this late. And then speaking of Gruul cards, this next pack has Disciple of the Old Ways, Ivy Lane Denizen, Primal Visitation, Scatter Arc, Millennial Gargoyle as the playables. I'm going to end up picking Millennial Gargoyle here just because I'm a little worried that I may not actually get enough playables. And of the other cards, I don't want to splash in a Boros deck because I want to play the fewest number of lands as possible. I just want a tight, aggressive focus. But if I had to splash because I wound up short of playables, it'd probably be Primal Visitation, but I'm going to try to avoid playing any of the cards in this pack, to be honest. Alright, so then we come to a pack where we have pretty mopey cards again for the red-white Boros deck. I think Hydroform is fine. Clinging Anemones is probably the best card here. There's also Horror of the Dim for people who want a marginal card. I briefly contemplate taking a Razor Tip Whip here, but I realize that there's no way if I have to play that I'm going to be happy with my deck anyway. So I'll just take the Clinging Anemone out of the pack and just hope nobody, is just getting the nut deck while I'm sitting here not getting any picks. And then the Scorchwalker Wield out of that original pack that I was considering it. There's also Armored Transport, but I think Scorchwalker's quite awesome in the Boros decks, especially. So I'm going to pick the Scorchwalker here. At the time, I wasn't actually sure how good the Scorchwalker was, because I honestly just hadn't had a chance to play with Blood Rush yet, but turned out to be quite a bit better than you would think. Next pack, we get a Tin Street Market. It's just, there's actually 2 mountains here because of a foil. And the best card in the pack was probably Bioshift, but that's way outside of what we're trying to do now. So I'll just take the Tin Street Market, It's a sideboard card for when your opponent has a seemingly endless stream of removal. Not exciting, but, you know, it's this late in the pack, what are you going to do? Here, there's just nothing for us. Ooze Flux, Adaptive Snapjaw, Beck, and Apparition. Just nothing we want to take. I end up taking the Ooze Flux just because of these cards. I'm not sure which one I want to play against the least, and I suspect it might be the Ooze Flux. Like, they just continuously make guys to block and such. So next pack has Adaptive Snapjaw, Midnight Recovery, and land. I don't think it really matters. I don't really want to play against, you know, either one particularly, but they're not nasty. But and then we get Last Thoughts. Woo! It's the Last Thoughts and the Last Thoughts of the pack. Get it? Haha. The last. Alright, whatever. Bad pun. Bad pun was bad. Alright, so going into pack 3, we have 19 playables, and I'd like to get rid of my Millennial Gargoyle and maybe an outside chance of the Bomber Core. So here, I opened up Legion Loyalist, which I'm not sure actually how good that card is. That's the 1/1 haste goblin with Battalion that makes, with Battalion, all your guys get First Strike and can't be blocked by tokens and something else. There's also a Warmind Infantry, a Pit Fight, and a Syndicate Tithes. And a Kingpin's Pet, so where are we on the Orzhov? There's still awesome cards. I'm not actually sure how good Legion Loyalist is. I guess they give First Strike and Trample, excuse me. But just being a 1/1 that has Battalion means he's not going to do much in the early game. And he's kind of a combat trick later because they're just going to, they can just kill him with anything. Whereas I think Warmind Infantry is actually like one of the stronger early Battalion guys. Like, he's fine without Battalion. He's like a 2/3, but you know, becoming a 4/3 is pretty boss. The Syndicate Tithes is pretty good too. This pack I kind of waffled on until the last minute, but I ended up taking the Warmind Infantry just because it's a little more aggressive than Syndicate Tithes. So the next pack, we have Wojak Halberdiers. It's just pretty obviously the best Boros card in the pack. There's a Crowned Ceratok and a Slaughterhorn, which makes me think whoever's Gruul's getting a pretty sweet pickup. Undercity Plague for the Orzhov guy, or Dimir guy. But yeah, the best Boros card here by a pretty decent margin is the Wojak Halberdiers. You would have to really know quite a bit about the format and have some reason to think Bomber Core was just infinitely better than it looks to be picking Bomber Core here. And you're not picking Zorichi Tiger or Towering Thunderfist. Those are just not even on the level of anything else. So yeah, pretty sure I've been shipping a really solid Gruul deck and a really solid Orzhov deck this entire pack, or this entire draft, excuse me. But staying on target with Wojak Halberdiers is fine. I actually think he's one of the better one of the better Boros commons that you can get. Like, he beats down pretty hard early and then becomes live later again when you can hit Battalion. Alright, so this pack, we have a Knight of Obligation or an Ember Beast. I'm pretty sure I want Ember Beast here. He's just way more aggressive than Knight of Obligation, although he might not be as kind of objectively powerful. He's definitely much more of what the Boros are trying to do. There's also a Rubble Hulk here, so I mean, whoever's Gruul is just getting the sickest out of this pack. There's also a Smite and a Martial Glory, and a Basilica Guards. So I'm kind of thinking I might maybe wheel the Martial Glory, or possibly wheel like one of the two Extort guys or Smite. Like, but I'm not banking on it at this point. Like, it's none of those cards are extremely exciting. So if I can wheel one, sweet. But if not, you know, I should be okay. This is gonna make 22 playables, and then at that point, you know, if I can't get a couple more cards out of the pack, it'd be really unfortunate. But alright, so here we have another Sky Knight Legionnaire. Hooray! More the merrier on that guy. Whoever's Gruul, they just got the sickness third pack. 'Cause there's a Gruul Rage Beast and a Gruul Guild Mage, a Pit Fight, and a Slaughterhorn all still in this pack. Like, it seems like there were about 4 or 5 packs in a row where everybody just opened just fantastic Gruul cards, but Skynet Legionnaire is totally fine. I'm not unhappy with this by any means. Little bit jealous of the hookup the Gruul player is getting, but I'm still getting very solid cards myself, so we're just we're filling out our mana curve with cheap aggressive guys, which is exactly what you want to do for Orzhov. Here, I don't think I'm going to wheel anything out of this pack, but maybe Foundry Street Denizen or Armored Transport, so that's my consideration there. And next, we have an actual choice here of Mugging or Warmind Infantry. There's nothing else in the pack that's even really close. Skullcrack is awesome and constructed, but we're not playing constructed. I wasn't actually sure whether you want your second Warmind Infantry or your third Mugging, but I figured that if you need a replacement, you can probably find a 3-drop somewhere. Like there's all these armored transports running around that nobody wants, whereas Mugging is not in effect. You're going to be able to find an easy replacement for. So I'm gonna pick the Mugging. There's an outside chance that this is wrong. Once again, I need to clarify. Battalion requires you to have a critical mass of creatures. While we do have 17 at this point in the draft, 3 of them, the Manor Gargoyle and the 2 Nav Squad Commandos, are guys we really don't want to play. Aha, but then we get a gift. We get a True Fire Paladin. This pack also has a Daring Skyjack and our Guildgate and a Court Street Denizen and a Righteous Charge. So this is one of those stacked guild packs that just opens up perfect for someone in the pack, and luckily it was us. I'm going to pick True Fire Paladin here. I'm not actually sure if that's better than Daring Skyjack. Like, flying is pretty strong in this set, but True Fire Paladin just seems like the kind of creature that's just really, really hard to stop in the mid-game. Like, a 4-power First Striker just beats up almost everything, and then, you know, when you get to the point where you can threaten 6 power, let alone, like, 8 power, like, the guy just beats pretty hard. So, next pack we have Viashino Shanktail or Massive Raid. There is also Fortress Cyclops, Nightwatch, and Millennial Gargoyle, but I think all of those cards are worse than the other 2. So, it's going to come down to either the Shanktail or the Massive Raid. And the question is kind of which effect do we need more in the deck? Do we need more sort of removal or reach in Raid, or do we want just another really efficient beater with Shanktail? I think at this point, since we have a Boros Charm and an Act of Treason and a Holy Mantle, along with 3 Muggings, I think we've got the reach and removal kind of covered. And we want to get some of these more marginal creatures out of the deck, so Shanktail's the pick here. Now we get to see our first Madcap skills of the entire draft. Obvious, easy pick here. None of the cards in color are Razor Tip Whip, which is not a card, and Ripscale Predator, which I think 6-drops are a little out of bounds for your average Boros deck. I think that's more of a Gruul kind of card. Anyway, Madcap skills is fantastic. It's definitely going to make the deck. It does make me a little concerned in that we now have quite a number of non-creature spells, kind of getting towards the maximum of that, and they're all pretty solid too, but it's still an obvious pick. Here we're going to take Syndic of Tithes. There's actually just nothing else in our colors, so that's fine. Syndic of Tithes is actually, I think, pretty good in Boros. You need a sort of a critical mass of early creatures to get your battalion going, and while a Grizzly Bear isn't an awesome combat creature, the Extort means you're still in the game even if you can't attack for a couple of turns. So, not an outstanding pick here. It's obviously better in Orzhov, but it's still a card we're going to play. Definitely better than Nav Squad Commandos and Manor Gargoyle. Now here we have a pretty marginal guy. I mean, it's Towering Thunder Fist or Zarichi Tiger. We don't want the life gain, so we're just going to take the Thunder Fist. Hopefully we don't have to play him. Right now we have enough playables without him, so it's just kind of a question of if we end up wanting to go a little bigger, or if he's going to end up a sideboard card. But either way, there's no reason to hate draft anything here. Saying too much. So the only card in our pack here is Smite. It's the only on-color card for us. And the rest of these cards are not something we're terribly afraid to play with. So we'll pick a Smite. It'll be a sideboard card against if we face a faster Boros deck, or if we face a very powerful Gruul deck. Possibly even if we're just on the draw sometimes we might bring it in. Here we have either an Armored Transport or another Towering Thunderfist. I'm not actually sure which of these is better. They're both quite marginal, but I end up picking the Armored Transport just because we definitely don't want too many 5-drops, and we have Nav Squad Commandos already hidden, so... oops, never mind. I picked the Towering Thunderfist. Awkward. Yeah, these aren't cards. Cackling Perimeter, I guess. The one I'd rather not play against if it comes down to it, so... taking that card. Last actual choice of the draft, Armored Transport or Island. I guess it's Armored Transport. Armored Transport. Not an island. So you might have noticed I've been hiding cards as we've been going along. I think this is useful so you can kind of see where your deck is at. Know if you need to just grab literally any playable. If there's spots in your curve that are weak that you need to fill up. It's just kind of a useful tool there. So now we move along to the building. First thing, obviously we're playing all of our on-guild gold cards. We're definitely playing all of our muggings. And then from here I just kind of pull out all the cards that I had just in the initial part of the draft where I was hiding cards. All the cards that I'm relatively certain I want to play. And then I'm going to see where I'm at and what of the remaining cards I have to play. So I'm actually at 22, and we have a pretty nice mana curve. Pretty good set of cards. Overall, I at the time was pretty happy with the deck, but not super excited. In retrospect, I think I underestimated this deck. I think this is actually a pretty sort of good representation of a Boros Battalion aggro deck. Like, we have a number of tricks, we have a little bit of removal, whole bunch of cheap, efficient beaters, curve tops out at 4. Lots of ways to push damage through. I kind of think this is sort of about what you want to try to get to with your Boros deck. So at this point I'm just deciding on the last card. I think with your mana curve topping out completely at 4, you don't actually need 17 lands, so I'm going to run 16. So at this point I'm just kind of deciding on my last playable, like what do I want to play, Foundry Street Denizen or Riot Gear or Armored Transport. Like I'm just kind of debating on those. Afterwards, after the draft, sort of with additional knowledge, actually I do think the Foundry Street Denizen was right, but I should probably have also put the Armored Transport in. I'm not completely sure over what, but I think just having one more creature would have been pretty good. So that's the deck, and thanks for watching.